My name is Carol Peters, and I'm proud to serve as the president and CEO of United Way Next. I'm calling in from Marco Island, Florida, hence the reason I have a little color on my face, because I've been out in the sun for the last 4 to 6 months down here in sunny Florida. I'm going to be making my way back to Madison, Wisconsin in the middle of May, which is where I get to see my friend Christy Shepard, which is why I said hello, neighbor. She's at the United Way of Dane County, which in the summer months is my home United Way. And in the winter months, I am with the United Way of Collier and the Keys down here in the Naples, Florida area. And interestingly enough, I just met yesterday, I met with Tiffany Mensch, who is the CEO of the United Way here in Naples, Florida, Collier County. And we've met before, so we just had an opportunity to meet in person, which is always a lot of fun for me since every day is virtual for me. So with that said, we are so pleased today to have a great audience. Looks like we've got 26 people on the call so far. We had over 80 people register for the session. Typically, these sessions are facilitated by Dan Dunn and Denise Fleckenstein, and they regret that they cannot be here today. They had other things come up, and as a result, I raised my hand and said, don't worry, I've got your back. I'll be today's facilitator. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat as we go through the presentation. We'll be watching the chat so that if there's any questions that pop up and it seems appropriate at the time, we'll try to pause for a moment, but we will have time at the end for Q&A. So don't be afraid to, write down your notes, whatever thoughts are top of mind. And if you have a question that you want to ask, we'll unmute at that time and encourage you to do so. So without further ado, I am so pleased to introduce my friend and United Way Next board member, as well as board treasurer, DJ Hampton, who's going to do his own self-introduction. DJ serves on our United Way Next Plan Giving volunteer faculty and is today's guest speaker. And along with him is a good friend and a colleague of his, Danielle, who again, they will introduce themselves. So thanks for joining us today, DJ and Danielle.
Our pleasure to be here. And I got to say, between Christy and Diane Lebson and a few others, we should just let them give this presentation. They've known more about this than I think I do. But anyways, it's so nice to see so many friendly faces on here. My name is DJ Hampton, and we'd love to start out by just saying I'm the current president and CEO here at Trident United Way in Charleston, South Carolina. It is chamber weather here, where we invite every company in the world to visit so they can see how gorgeous this area is ahead of August. But we are very blessed to be living here in the Low Country. I've been joined by Danielle Trilth-Georgeman. I'll ask Danielle, would you mind giving a quick intro on yourself? And I'll do the same after you. Danielle?
Yes. Well, hello. Thank you for having us on today. My name is Danielle. I am a new Director of Plan Giving and Endowment here at Trident United Way. A little bit about my background. I studied political science and public administration. I was a teacher for a little while. And then I actually got my start at a United Way in Southwestern Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm from, born and raised. And I don't know if anybody is calling in today from that region, but there's a fantastic team there. And I really loved it there. I actually was in the community impact side of the house. So for the past couple of years, I've worked at Trident United Way, started as a corporate advancement officer doing our campaigns. And in January, started in the individual space doing our plan giving and endowment work. And it's been really exciting. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of the things that we've been doing.
Thanks, Danielle. My name is DJ Hampton. I cut my teeth first as a community fellow assigned to Birmingham, Alabama from United Way Worldwide 21 years ago, which hard to believe it's been 21 years. I then stayed on and helped lead the plan giving effort there, where we were focused on endowing Tocquevilles and really building out $1 Million Legacy Circle. Then had a chance to go to United Way Worldwide, where I got to work with Ed John. And so normally Dan Dunn would be facilitating this, who was my boss in Birmingham. I then went to work for Ed John, who's also involved with United Way Next at United Way Worldwide, and helped create the Endowment and Gift Planning Service Center, roll out the United Way Life program, as well as support $1 billion in capital campaigns, endowment and initiative campaigns Then went to ALS Association, if you remember, Ice Bucket Challenge. Then after that, went to March of Dimes. And for 4 years after that, was really focused on building a consulting firm, which did a lot of work around helping United Ways and other global nonprofits increase assets, both individual and planned giving. And so we're really excited to share a little bit here. Feel free to jump questions into the chat, and we'll also make sure we leave some Q&A time at the end. And so Danielle's going to be joining me and sharing her wisdom. And so Danielle, thank you in advance for what you're about to share. And so we'd like to start off with this quote. We've been using this with our Planned Giving Council, which is a visioning council right now. And we point out to them that whenever United Way needs to do something, and whenever America in general needs to do something, you pull a group of really passionate, committed folks to a table. You break bread and you have a conversation about what needs to happen. And then from there, you organize. You make things happen by leveraging the caring power of human beings to want to do things that are bigger than themselves. And at the end of the day, while Alexis de Tocqueville noticed that in Democracy in America, and we then named the Tocqueville Society after him, this has been an immutable trait that has just carried on. And so the thing I love most about United Way, as you all know, I'm preaching to the choir, is the transformative power of these human beings doing big things together. And so today, our presentation is going to be focused on 4 acts. You'll share what these are. You'll see 4 concrete blocks here. We'll start with a visioning and why, where you can leverage volunteers as a strategy. We'll talk about once you've got a program going where volunteers can plug in, about asking and evaluating either your success or evaluating and sharing your success. We'll talk a bit about their engagement around thanking and informing both current and future donors who want to give you gifts of assets or outright assets. And then we'll talk about this notion of how volunteers can be leveraged in campaigns. We, of course, are happy to talk about anything. And so with that, if it's okay with y'all, we'll jump into the visioning and the why. And so when we talk about visioning, it's really based on one human trait. Psychologically, when humans are asked for advice, they typically feel a higher affinity, and many times you'll get money. Whereas a lot of times when you ask people for money without them having a buy-in or bought into a direction, you get a lot of advice. And so the whole idea of leveraging volunteers as you're looking to establish and create a planned giving program is to really help them, not only help us create the why behind what would be the purpose of an endowment, but for them to shape a vision that their peers can buy into, that they would buy into, and that ultimately can become a contagious idea around your board and other major donors as to why they should support you. And so I'm going to ask Danielle in a second to weigh in here. But the idea that donors can get excited by this vision that they create and co-create and own, and then spread that not only to your board, but to other high potential donors. It boils down to they want to see themselves shaping a future that they will never see. And the easiest way to accomplish this, if you're looking to start a planned giving program, is to start up a visioning task group. All a visioning task group does is that over a course of a couple months or 6 months, is they put down on paper, why would your endowment exist? What would be the purpose of an endowment? And what are the strategies that we would want to leverage? And how does that align to our mission of helping people today and helping people far into the future? And then hopefully they become your ambassadors and your champions to go out there and preach the gospel of planned giving to their friends after they themselves have made a gift. And part of this, though, is to recruit some expertise from volunteers who understand what is needed to insulate a nonprofit from potentially problematic planned gifts by helping to establish the policies. And we'll talk about why volunteers being involved in that process is really key. And so Danielle is living this right now. 6 months ago, she started this visioning process with a group of caring people here. Danielle, would you like to kind of walk people through what you're doing right now and any advice and thoughts that you have in that process as you're leading this right now and visioning?
Absolutely. So, yeah, we sort of began this process with a group of volunteers who really could be our champions and help us lead the way. One volunteer in particular, who is an attorney by day, but also really has a heart for United Way and our work in the community. He's had a ton of volunteer roles throughout the years. So someone like that can really champion your work and speak about the community impact. your different programs, but also has some know-how around the importance of plan giving and how, as we look to move forward, in the next chapters of our organizations, how these types of gifts can be transformative and really are so important to diversifying your revenue streams. So we planned 4-hour-long sessions that are spaced roughly about a month apart. We have conducted 2 of them. We still have 2 more to go. Each session had a different topic. So we started really with some educating pieces where we, just talked about like what it actually is a planned gift. There's a lot of different terminology that people throw around there. So we really gave that a definition of what we're talking about when we use that word. And then what different types of gifts there are. And as I said, the educating about why these are important, why now is the perfect time to be starting these programs if you haven't already, and how they can really just support your organization. We then asked them to share their thoughts. What experience has they had with planned giving? What gets them excited about it? What questions do they have? And then we explored other United ways that have done this work really well, because we know that, there's no need to reinvent the wheel when we have sort of a roadmap to follow of United Ways that have done really fantastic jobs and have more mature plan giving programs. So we looked at Miami and Birmingham and Calgary, just to name a couple, and really looked at what their endowment structures looked like and how did they communicate them and market them. And then we tried them on, so to speak, and explored how might this look in Charleston, South Carolina, and the broader Tri-County, as what we call our area. So that really led to some robust discussions. And just like when you get any group of people in a room, they're going to have different opinions on that. And so that's really valuable, and we welcomed that. We know that there are some trends that by age, there are different attitudes towards, maybe endowing the program costs of things. And so that you can really say to your donors, 100% of your donation really goes into our programs. But then there's other people who are really passionate about wanting to endow specific, mission bucket type of programs. So that process has been exciting. Ultimately, though, we're going to ask this group to really map out the strategy and map out their recommendation for what our endowment could look like. And then we'll be able to present that to our board of directors. So really taking these volunteer recommendations, and we hope that it will help us when going to the board, because then we have the buy-in of the stakeholders in our community. It's not just DJ and myself sitting in a room deciding, saying this is how we need to structure our endowment, but really our best friends and stakeholders are the ones who've made these recommendations.
Thanks, Danielle. And I will tell you, these meetings are a ton of fun. You get donors who've been supporting us for 30 years in a room with young leaders who are multi-generational, to people who are new to the community, and they're all just talking about what drives their philanthropic passions. And so the next meeting, we're just going to start mapping out what would be the buckets for an endowment, what would make them excited. And we're going to work through and just have a dialogue. And the best part of these meetings is Danielle and I are going to be talking a lot. It's going to be them talking to each other and us capturing. And so the goal will be to have a set of recommendations by July, and then we will transition to kind of that next piece. And so I'll just pause here. Does anyone have any questions on this leveraging volunteers to create the why and visioning for a future endowment for those who are looking to start or reinvigorate an endowment effort? Anyone want to take themselves off? Miss Sarah. And I don't want to butcher your last name. How do you say your last name, Miss Sarah?
It's pronounced shy, like timid.
Shy.
It used
Excellent.
to be longer and more Polish. My husband's grandfather was an orphan with no papers. And when he was brought into a home, that's all he could remember. So that's where that name comes from.
That's phenomenal. Well, welcome, Miss Shy. What can we answer for you?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, you're talking about doing all your groups and then you're hoping to have recommendations by July. what is the total timeline from like the very first meeting to that July recommendation?
Yeah, so we began in January. Well, actually, we'll say before that, our history is that our main volunteer champion, and so he's the chair of our task group, our working group, and then he will become the chair of this group will transform into an actual plan giving committee. And so he has been leading that. He's been a champion for it for years. And due to some, just changes in the organization, leadership changes, DJ just celebrated his 1-year anniversary with us. So, we had a lot of changes, you can imagine, with the new CEO, but our volunteer was advocating for this work long before that. But to answer your question, we began really in January. So let's say like 4 months. We put some planning into there, but 4 to 5 months of these sessions before making the recommendation. But you could space these apart, how you like. It really depends on the capacity that you have, the volunteers, everyone's schedule. We chose to put about a month in between those meetings. And then another thing that we did to bring more voices to that conversation so that it wasn't just the 5 or so volunteers in that working group, we also conducted informal interviews in between some of those sessions so that we could just bring more voices to the conversation. And we asked them questions like, would you consider making a planned gift? And what challenges do you think we might encounter? And just ask for their general thoughts. So it was good to have those other voices to be able to bring in. So it wasn't just 5 people, but we had around 15 different people. And so we could talk about their responses as well. 4 or 5 months. If you wanted to do it short, quicker, you could shorten that. You could also, take it longer.
Yeah, and I will add that my 3rd week, I met with Ken Smith, who's our volunteer who's leading this. And the first thing out of his mouth was, when the hell are you going to do planned giving? And the answer was, well, when you want to help us. And then we followed up with him in August and pitched him a kind of a high-level strategy and said we would hire a staff member to lead it if he'd be willing to lead it. And we were just lucky enough to have a person on staff who had the right temperament, the right attitude, the right relationship and skill building with volunteers, even though she doesn't have any legal background, to be able to jump in with both feet. And so we were happy to promote from within. And so Danielle's hit the ground running with that. So I'd say from the first conversation, it's been about a year, but I would say of Danielle actually pulling the volunteers together, it's been 2 months. Excellent. And so once you've got your visioning your why, and you've got some policies that you've stolen and adapted locally that's being championed by a volunteer, the next block down is, how do you then leverage volunteers to make the ask and also help you evaluate the success of your program? Now, I've got to ask, we all know this truism. It's one of United Way's first things I learned when I joined. What's the number one reason people don't make a gift to United Way? Anyone unshy want to mute themselves and share? Amanda Burns got it in the chat. They're not asked. And that is true of planned gifts. Because of our annual campaign nature, volunteers and donors typically don't think of United Way the same way they'd think of an institution that has a much longer, quote unquote, time frame familiarity to them. So think hospitals, think universities, think community foundations. Having a volunteer ask another to join them and making a commitment is the single most effective way. And it is one of the strongest methods of growing planned giving. The good news is those volunteers do not have to have anything other than a passion for United Way, and ideally made a planned gift themselves. So pro tip number 1, when you're creating your committee, have a dual ask be, we're here to ask you to join our planned giving committee that's been stood up, and here's what we're doing, and here's the direction. And oh, by the way, if you agree to be on the committee, we need you to also make a planned gift, because we can't have anyone on the committee who hasn't made a planned gift themselves. So that's one way to get some really quick wins and move traction. The other key, though, is that if they've made a planned gift themselves, they could use the magic phrase, I invite you to join me. And the key is the volunteers are asking each other. And so the really high-performing United Ways I see have recruited a volunteer cabinet that is committing to ask 5 to 10 people a year within a portfolio to join them. They've made planned gifts themselves, and they are willing to not only celebrate those gifts, but to share their personal motivations why. And that is really where if I had to put it one thing to take away from today, is that is the single best way to grow your planned gifting program. You can have effectiveness with staff, but you're not going to have anywhere near as high of an effective rate as you would by having a volunteer ask another one to join them and making a planned giving commitment. Whether that is to a program that you have within your endowment, whether that is to joining a society by endowing a Tocqueville gift for Tocqueville Legacy Circle, for example, whatever the reason why, having a volunteer make the ask will always be far, far, far superior than a staff member asking. And Danielle, before I move on to the second and third point, anything you'd add to that in your experience?
Yeah, I think just to add to that, we are using, there's many tools out there that can sort of help you in guiding these conversations. We are using a marketing and software system. There's a couple out there. There's like Freewill, Crescendo. We're using one called MarketSmart, and we are sending out a survey to identify, like, we've set parameters for the donors who we want to start with, those who've either self-identified as our best friends because of their giving level or the amount of time that they've given. And so we've sent them a simple survey that comes from DJ, and then based on how they answer it, they might share that they've already made a planned gift. They've already left Trident United Way in their will. And that helps us, and we know what kind of meeting we're going to have. We'll have DJ meet with them. Other people might respond that they want to learn more. They might want to learn more about gifts that will reduce their taxes, or they might be interested in language for bequest. And so, as I mentioned, with Freewill, which we all have access to through United Way Worldwide, there are some different tools you can level up and get microsites and different things like that. So it directs them through there. We're able to track their behavior and what they're interested in. And this helps with us, as DJ mentioned, our main champion, his name is Ken, and he and I are right now scheduling and lining up some conversations to have. And it's wonderful for both of them because, he's going to be meeting with somebody who he's known for a long time through board and volunteerism with United Way. And it really will be more of a peer-to-peer ask than me asking this particular person.
So that program, again, that Danielle was referencing is called MarketSmart. Very, very popular among national nonprofits as well as universities. Not as well used in the United Ways. We're leveraging it right now to narrow our funnel down to know who to talk to that isn't on our current top 100 best friend list. And that's, to me, the real power of there. And so Danielle's doing a great job managing that. Reach out to Danielle if you want any more info on MarketSmart and what that allows you to do. The second bucket is evaluating planned gifts against gift acceptance policies. Invariably, you're going to get a phone call from someone who says, hey, I've got a timeshare in St. Martin's I want to give you, or I've got land that is a Superfund site. Will you take it? Or I've got XYZ thing that has no relation to your mission or in no way should you accept, but they're trying to get rid of it because they can't get rid of it themselves. Having those gift acceptance policies I talked about, the models are all on United Way Online. And then having a volunteer being able to look at a checklist and says, is it any of these things within our gift acceptance policies? Nope. Then we shouldn't accept it. Not having that fall on staff gives us the ability to follow up with that person, even if they love you and their intentions are right, to say, listen, our policies are this. Our volunteer committee who leads our planned giving effort had said this doesn't fit into our gift acceptance policies. I'm sorry we can't help it, but we're so grateful for your considering us in that. Can we talk about other ways you could help out our mission? It gives you not being the staff making that decision. It puts it back up to volunteer leadership. And that gives staff a really big out for potentially fraught conversations. And so I always recommend having one or two members of your planned giving council agree to evaluate any unexpected planned gifts to check them against your gift acceptance policies. And then the last one is, I strongly urge whoever you have as your planned giving chair to not only have an automatic seat at your board, but to have them be part of your executive council, just like you would have your Tocqueville chair and your campaign chair. We are talking gifts that are multiples, 100x to 1,000x multiple of what a person gives annually, because assets are such a bigger pool. And if you don't have the voice at the board every time reporting metrics and the successes, people focus on the short term and miss out on the longer term wins that you could have. And so Having a volunteer being at your executive committee and at your board level allows them to make sure that is put front and center and that they're at the table talking about and championing this at every chance they get. It also is a sneaky way of making sure the board sees at every meeting at the bottom of the agenda, please remember United Way or your will or estate plan and tell us when you do, as well as them bringing it up. So when they get ready to update their will, they're hearing it and thinking, oh boy, I know my church, I know my university or hospital I need to think, what about United Way too? And so that to me is a critical piece that if you want to leverage a volunteer, that could have a huge dividends. Danielle, anything you'd add before we move on to the third block?
Yeah, I would just add that this is going to be a really important place to leverage the expertise of your finance and your investment committees members in terms of creating those policies. Also, depending on the community that you're in, it could be an opportunity to partner with your local community foundation. We are lucky in Charleston that the CEO of our Coastal Community Foundation here is a former United Way person. And so he and DJ actually know each other personally and go back, which has been really wonderful to sort of repair the relationship between our two organizations that we didn't have historically before DJ came to town. And so they are really on board and excited to help us with some of the administration of more complicated gift vehicles. Now, that just still doesn't mean that we're going to accept something that someone's just trying to offload because it's not actually going to be a good investment. But for more complicated gifts that we just don't have the capacity with our current finance team to be able to handle, they would offer to help us. So that's just something as well to consider depending on the relationship that you have in your local community with your foundation.
Thank you, Danielle. Any questions for us before we move on to the third block? Okay, hearing none. The third block, if you recall, is thanking and informing. The reason thanking and informing is one of the things that often gets neglected, but it's probably one of the most critical roles these volunteers can play, is that it is really easy to add you to a will, to a retirement account through a change of beneficiary form, to an existing insurance policy through a change of beneficiary form. Those three vehicles are going to cover 90% of all planned gifts you'll ever receive. You know how easy it is to remove you from those? Just as easy. You just update your documents. And so having one or two members of your volunteer committee who agree that maybe instead of making asks, they'll actually pick up the phone and say thank you can be a huge payoff. Staff should be doing this regardless. That's minimum floor. But you want to add it, make it important, have a volunteer reach out to them and say, hey, you are like me. We love this community so much. We are supporting United Way together in our will or estate plan. You love them like we love my children. Thank you so much for that. Want to tell me a little bit more? That just it further cements that feeling that they're doing something bigger than themselves and they're being recognized and celebrated by a peer, which psychologically drives that real pleasure center of the brain that they are a good human being doing good things. They'll never believe you as a staff member when you say that because you have an unpure reason why you're being paid by the organization to do it. But a volunteer like them is not. And that right there is pure magic. So have a volunteer or two who all they're going to do is pick up the phone and call or meet with your existing plan giving folks and just say thank you. It makes a world of difference there. We do thankathons all the time for annual campaign. I would say you'll have a bigger payoff here on plan giving with one volunteer than you will with 20 volunteers on the other side. The other thing I will say is that in that conversation, you can give them a few key points to highlight about why their investment's good. So they can, for example, share updates on new programs that you're doing or stats on the lives that you're changing. Or if you know the person is designated to a specific bucket within your endowment, for example, children learning or whatever your buckets are, they can then report back a few stats. And again, it makes it even more meaningful to that person. And then getting back to this, you can have your board chair do this, or you can occasionally invite one of those volunteers to the board to give a personal testimony and report to the board on the progress of plan giving that they're seeing and a personal story of why they're so grateful for the board members who've made a plan gift to join them. Again, can be your chair, it could be somebody else, but making sure you're thinking through how do they thank the board and inform them as well as thanking every donor and inform them. Danielle, I know we've had a number of conversations on this. Any thoughts you have?
Yeah, so we have a donor stewardship plan that we have for all donors. So whether they are our kind of our campaign donors, maybe they give just $1 paycheck, or all the way up to our Tocqueville Society, and we have different pieces and touch points that we put in depending on their donor level. And so we are looking at right now how we can really bolster this plan and add in for any donor who makes a legacy gift, and how we can celebrate them, and whether that is just those additional touch points, or perhaps it's a behind the scenes tour of, for us, that could be our food share program that we've newly launched in the past couple of years, or it could be meeting with DJ to get a briefing on the program that they care most about. Those little things can go a long way, and we're trying to be really thoughtful about how we add those pieces in, because we've learned from past mistakes. We know, looking back like 20 years, there were certain planned gift commitments that were made and were not realized. And you don't blame those people if they never heard from anybody. As DJ said, it's just as easy to take us out of their will as it was to put us in. And that really is our responsibility to steward them properly, and to celebrate them for their generosity and their kindness, and to make sure that they feel that they are connected to us, and that they still want to make that gift.
Thanks, Danielle. Any questions from y'all? Okay. The last and final bucket we'll talk about here today is really this idea of campaigns. Now, we've all heard this word campaign. It's like the word community. It means something different to every person who hears it. So it's important for us to define it. If I'm going to define it, it's a targeted effort above and beyond the annual campaign to drive transformational revenue for your organization. They're usually time-bound. They usually involve a lot of infrastructure and a lot of planning. But I will tell you, there's multiple flavors of this, which is why whenever you hear the word campaign, people automatically think of different things. There's anniversary campaigns for anyone coming up on a 75th or 100th anniversary. There's outright endowment campaigns with the goal of building long-term sustainable and innovative funding for your United Way. There's capital campaigns to buildings and other infrastructure needs. And then there's mission-focused campaigns. All of these flavors of campaigns are happening. Sometimes they're intermixed at United Ways. Very common among most nonprofits, less common among United Ways, but they tend to be the highest infusion of new resources organizations will receive over about a century period. So for example, we've all heard of Dallas, 100 million, Southampton Roads, 50 million. We have smaller campaigns of 10 to $20 million. These are very targeted and purposeful. But the idea here is that these are essentially, while they're guided by staff, typically sometimes partnering with consultants, at the end of the day, the volunteers are the key piece of the visioning process for what you would use this campaign structure for, the feasibility of doing it to evaluate, does it make sense? How they add capacity for staff alone can't drive this. It has to be done with volunteers. All the asks usually typically come from a volunteer partnering with a staff or volunteers partnering together. The publicity for it on the back end is best told from volunteers because that's supported by staff. And then the celebrating on the back end internally is a magical way to leverage those volunteers. Now, there are many, many, many examples now of United Ways doing campaigns. I've partnered on both sides where I've led a capital campaign. I've also been on the consulting side where we've been sourced. Diane and I, for example, worked together on one. These can be magical, but you have to have all of the infrastructure in place for planned giving before you consider this. So this is like the 501 class version of planned giving. That once you've got a good donor base and you've got a great planned giving infrastructure, you can do these things outside of your campaign that don't hurt it, but at the same time, volunteers lead it and make it happen. And so, Diane, can I put you on the spot? I know we got to partner on one of these. It was a ton of fun. Anything you'd add that I'd miss about the importance of volunteers in here? Because I know you still are doing capital campaigns and anniversary campaigns and endowment campaigns with some United Ways and non-United Ways.
Well, thanks for asking, DJ, and hi, everybody. The one thing that I think is really important with regards to these campaigns is seeing how they can energize volunteers and donors above and beyond the financial aspect of the time-limited campaign. So I would say get ready for some really innovative ideas that take place, even above and beyond the campaign. That's probably the only thing I'd really add right there. You guys are doing a great job.
Well, thank you, Diane. And if you all ever have questions, Diane is an incredible resource, also a fellow United Way Next board member and just an amazing professional. So thank you, Diane, for letting me put you on the spot. Any questions on this idea of campaigns before we move on? So we wanted to leave you with some key resources to think about. If you're saying, oh boy, how do I do any of this? Your first stop is United Way Online. Good news is online, United Way has it. The bad news is it's online, so it's hard to find. You have to go into the major giving, planned giving, and then the folders that Evelyn Morgner, who's the second resource I'll tell you about, is there. There's a planned giving toolkit, which walks through a lot of the high level pieces around what does it take to vision? What does it take to have job descriptions? What does it take for gift acceptance policies? Those are really amazing resources that you can just take and run with. If you're interested in some type of a campaign, an anniversary campaign or others, there's a great anniversary campaign guide on there that's been put together over the years and a slew of other resources. So if you're interested in this, it is a great place to start from. And the second thing I'd always recommend is 1-800-EVELYN Morgner. Call Evelyn. She's at United Way Worldwide. She is not only a wealth of knowledge, but will be able to direct you to the other United Ways that are doing an amazing job in these specific areas and may have stepped in landmines that you want to avoid, or maybe doing amazing work that could be helpful there. And so Evelyn, she's near and dear to my heart. I got the honor of working with and for her for a while. She's wonderful. And then I would say other United Ways are a great source. You see Christy Shepard on here. Christy has been working in planned giving and has experimented left and right on things and major giving. She's a wealth of knowledge. Other United Ways that Danielle and I've mentioned, they're more than happy to get on the phone with you and walk you through it. And if you really want to see some magic, ask if their planned giving champion would be comfortable getting on the phone with your planned giving volunteer and watch the magic happen as these two volunteers compare, talk, inspire each other, challenge each other. It's really a wonderful thing. And so if you can make those three pieces work, it's great. And then the carrot, the cherry on top, the biggest one that I would add next is United Way Next. Incredible past professionals or current professionals or retired professionals who have forgotten more than I've ever known about planned giving and are there to help. And Carol, can I put you on the spot to share a little bit about what that looks like and what are the planned giving options for folks?
Sure. Thanks, DJ, and thanks, Danielle. You guys did a great job. I learned a lot just listening, and it reminded me so much about the importance of volunteers. And with this being National Volunteer Week, it's an appropriate time to reach out to your people who are helping your United Way and make sure you take just a moment to say thanks. United Way Next is pleased to bring to our community of United Way leaders, all of you, different resources that are available at your fingertips. First, I'll mention that on our website at unitedwaynext.org, we have a list of our planned giving faculty. It's a roster of volunteers who have chosen to support through volunteerism local United Ways with planned giving, endowments, anniversary campaigns, you name it. In that space, we really take those inquiries. So typically what will happen is if Evelyn Morgner gets a request now for planned giving, she oftentimes will pass it along to me. I host a discovery call with you and your team to better learn what the needs are in your area or in your community. And then we connect you with one of our planned giving faculty and mentors. So the mentors are really there to support your request. They will draw upon the other faculty depending on what you're looking for. We have done some feasibility studies at a very low level, but it's been very beneficial for the United Ways that have benefited from that. If you aren't familiar what that is, it could be a tool or a resource that helps you and your community decide if it's the right decision to go down the path of actually creating or starting an endowment. A lot of United Ways maybe have a small endowment that was created years ago, but there's been no additional work done. This might be the time for a next mentor to sit with you and really look at your data, assess some of that data, and assist you with next steps. I guess I would call out a few folks that I know are on the call that have benefited from a mentor, and not to put anybody on the spot, but I know that Sarah in Marshfield, Wisconsin is working with Jeffrey Steck, who has recently started working with Sarah and her CEO, Ashley. So Sarah, I don't know if there's something you'd like to share with, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, but it's a great way for others in the network to hear. If you'd
Yeah,
like
no,
to.
I'd be happy to. We're basically starting, we have an endowment where a little had been put into it a while back, but no one's really done anything with it since that point. So we're really starting from ground zero is how we're looking at it. And working with Jeff has been absolutely amazing. He will just like, we had like an introductory call where he kind of said, this is what you need to start with. So we'd go back, Ashley and I would work together, put that together, email it over to him, and he's like, great. Let's set up a time next week. Let's talk it through. And we've been doing that back and forth for about 2 months or so, I think. And it's just the progress we're making. It feels really good because we're guided in something that it would take us so much time to also research on top of actually doing the work. He's kind of helping us to move a little bit faster than we'd be able to without him. And the guidance we're getting is fantastic as far as like, this is like changing how we word things, changing how we present things. Like we're building up the case, we're building up a list of questions for when we're doing those one-on-one interviews, so that before we walk through the door with anybody, we kind of know exactly what we're going to do. And today I was just typing up our list of our first like task kind of people. So I'm working on that so that we're really poised to start having those conversations any day now. So it's a very exciting time for us. We're loving the support, we're loving the guidance, and it's just, we feel really, really good about it.
Great. I'm so glad to hear about the great progress. So I make the connection with the local United Way, meet, like know Sarah and Ashley from her team, get to know them better, meet, find out, what they're looking for, and then pair them with the right volunteer that can assist, which is obviously Jeff Steck. Our volunteers within United Way Next are incredibly talented professionals who have worked in the United Way, served in the United Way, and have a real passion for supporting the network in this way. So when you inquire about having someone support you and your team, you're going to find someone who is just as dedicated as the people that serve on your United Way board of directors. So people like Diane, people like DJ, that have just really shown up in this community. So I can't impress upon you enough. If there's an interest, you can email me directly. And Caitlin, if you don't mind, can you add my email to the chat? Send me an email with a little blurb about what you're looking for, best time to connect. I do have some availability next week if needed, that I could do a discovery call with you. I will disclose though that I'm going to be on vacation the week of May 6th, and I will not have my laptop. So unfortunately, we'll have to table it till mid-May. But if I get some requests next week, I'm happy to do what I can to connect you right away to a mentor. The other thing I'll point out that Sarah said that's really appropriate to share is that these people are not just mentoring, they're coaching you and they're your accountability partner. They're going to give you some action items to work on, and they're going to encourage you and cheer you on along the way. So you're actually going to be the one doing the work, but you're going to have somebody guiding you. And I think that's the difference. It's setting you up for success, and you're going to know what your next steps are. And it's based on your decision to take action and be driven for the results that you want to achieve. If it's a busy time and you say right now isn't the best time, then let's table it until you're ready. But don't wait, because I think that's the biggest aha for me as a United Way professional along the way. I think that my United Way, when I was serving, could have leaned into this work much earlier because we had great relationships with so many of our donors, but we didn't do the planned giving piece because I kept saying, I'm too busy with campaign season. I'm too busy with allocations. And if you never get to the conversation, then you can never, advance this work forward. So anyway, that's a little bit about Next and where we're at today. We also do support with other things beyond planned giving. So if there is something that's bubbling up in your community and you're like, I'd like to figure out what resources are available, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to just have a conversation to talk about what that might look like. So with that said, DJ and Danielle, there's anything else that you all wanted to share today, we can open it up for Q&A and take it from there.
Yeah, I think the last words of wisdom I would share is just remember, you're not alone in this. Reach out and get the help you need. This work is very lonely if you're the sole person working on it locally and you don't feel like you have the support you need. You're not the first one to go through this, nor will you be the last. So pick up that phone. We are more than happy to pay it forward because we were in your spot once. And we know you'll do the same down the road when you get that phone call. The second piece I would recommend is don't spend a lot of time engaging financial planners if you have limited resources. Now, it's great to have one or two on your committee, but if you think you have limited time and you need to go and tell them because they're advising clients to give you gifts, they're not advising them at all. They're asking who do they want to support. So if you have to choose between asking a donor or engaging a financial planner, go talk to the donor. Don't waste your time on the financial planner. And then the last thing I would say is don't be afraid to start somewhere. Leverage volunteers, make it happen. These funds are really needed to lift people out of poverty, address systemic racial injustices, and really give everyone a better shot at a thriving future. And so it'd be empowered to be the superhero that is going out there to get those funds because it's needed now more than ever. Danielle, anything you'd close with before we open it up for Q&A?
Yeah, I would just underscore the power of this network and being part of the United Way community and family. It's been so wonderful to learn from other United Ways, from Evelyn. She is a wealth of knowledge. And so I'm happy to connect with anyone as well. And I think it's a two-way street with learning and sharing best practices with each other. And as DJ said, it's ultimately that, to make our communities better places.
Thanks, Danielle. And special thanks to Diane and to Carol for letting me put you on the spots. That was not planned ahead of time. And thank you for jumping in with both feet. And so with that, what questions do y'all have or thoughts that you would like to add for the group's benefit?
Everybody's so quiet, so I'll jump back in. And I just want to reiterate what all three of you have said, is that working with Jeff, and I also have a resource and development director at a neighboring United Way that I recently met with, just having those different people to bounce ideas off of and ask how they do things and kind of help to guide your process. It's so much more fun and so much more effective having those different voices. So I would really echo that same sentiment that find those people that you can connect with that can kind of help you to be excited to move forward and not feel because it can feel really daunting and overwhelming, but just get in with the right crowd and keep asking those questions and keep moving forward. And I think I'm really enjoying this process and loving it. So
Well, keep eating that elephant one bite at a time, Sarah. Great advice. Diane, I see your hand up.
Well, just because you put me on the spot, I'm going to put you on the spot. But first of all, happy anniversary. That's amazing. It has come up so quickly. So, DJ, I'll throw this to you or to Danielle. What is the biggest mistake that you have seen nonprofits or United Ways make, and what do you advise them to do to not make that mistake?
Yeah, you want to go? Would you like to go first, Danielle, or would you like me to?
I'll let DJ go first because he has more experience and has consulted with other United Ways, so he might have more knowledge in this area than I do.
I would say the biggest mistake is not actually putting the time aside to do this. The tyranny of the present is always going to be there. It's an old phrase that Ed John said and Dan Dunn has said 100 times. The tyranny of what we've got to get done in the short term often prevents us mentally from doing the work that's needed today to prioritize these conversations because, quote unquote, it doesn't bring you dollars today if they put you in a will for 5 years from now. But that transformational gift, had that been started 20 years ago, you'd have a whole pipeline of those transformational gifts. And so the first mistake I see is not prioritizing this just as important as the present. And then the second thing that I would say I constantly see is making the mistake of assuming that you've got buy-in and not spending the time to bring your CEO along if they're not bought in, your current and future board chairs along if they're not bought in, and then one-on-one discussions with every main influencer that you have and anyone who's a Tocqueville donor or more who's been giving to you for 10 years more. You cannot spend enough time talking with people about this And so get out there and do it. And those are the two biggest mistakes I see. Danielle, anything you'd add? And then Diane, I'll ask you or Christy or others to add anything else they see.
Yeah, I think also just not overlooking those who aren't already a major donor or, in Tocqueville, because we know that some of our loyal donors, maybe they give $1 a paycheck, but they've been doing that for 15, for 20 years. They're going to be an excellent person to talk to. And we've seen with Market Smart, as I mentioned, and I saw that the link was shared there. It's been really interesting to read some of the survey feedback that has come in from people whose names I didn't even know. They weren't on my radar, but then I went and looked them up in our CRM, and sure enough, they've been giving for decades. So those people can surprise you and should definitely not be ignored or overlooked.
And ask your best friends to help. That's the other thing I would say is don't miss that.
I think, and so glad to see you there, DJ.
Christy,
gosh,
I miss
it's been
you.
forever. So exciting. So look for a call from me offline.
I would love that.
I think one thing that when you mentioned earlier, it can be very lonely doing this work. And I actually had a board chair tell me that. And he had suggested reaching out to the other United Ways because that's something he's done in his industry. So I feel like, to keep reinforcing. The other part that makes it less lonely is to bring all of your colleagues along, right? Talk to your coworkers about it. They're also really good candidates to do something for a planned gift. And they're in the resource development side, well, any part of the organization, they're out talking to the community. So the more that they know and can be ambassadors for your planned giving work, even the better. So those are things that have definitely kind of helped advance the work here in Madison.
Thank you, Christy. Look forward to that call. I just texted you my cell phone. Any other thoughts or questions? Well, thank you all for this opportunity to share. I am a huge and passionate believer in the power of planned giving within United Way. And so I appreciate not only all of you being willing to lead this effort in your local communities, but carrying that flame forward. So thank you in advance for going out and raising the money that, while you may not see it today, will have a huge benefit on many, many lives down the road. So thank you all.
DJ and Danielle, let's give them a round of applause. Awesome job. And also just want to kind of give a shout out. If there's anybody on the call that wants to open up and unmute and share about an experience they had, Sarah, I knew for sure could share a bit about her mentor experience, but if anybody's benefited from either a conversation with one of our planned giving faculty or been a part of something that has brought value, it's always great for peer-to-peer connection here. So I'll give you that chance. And then I also want to make sure that we invite you back for our next planned giving learning session. For this group, it'll be offered in June. Ed John and Monica Esterbrook are going to be speaking. And so watch for the information to be shared in the Global Digest. You can go to our website at unitedwaynext.org and scroll through our upcoming events to see what's happening. And then the last thing I'll mention is we are a community that is supported by our community, and we rely heavily on the local United Ways to contribute funds throughout the year to help support and advance our mission. So if you are representing a United Way that is currently not involved with our organization, United Way Next, I would love to have a conversation with you. The contribution can start at $100 for a local United Way, so it's very reasonable, and it obviously provides these types of learning sessions as well as the mentorships. And then we invite you to be individual members as well. A lot of times people think of our organization as more of a retiree or an alumni association, but we welcome current staff you can start at $35 to be a member of Next, and it's those additional contributions that help us continue to advance this work. So grateful to each of you for being here today. Again, grateful to DJ and Danielle for your leadership and your support and all that you shared today, your wisdom. Thank you to Sarah for her willingness to support and be a testimonial for us today about the work you're doing with Jeff Stack, and to Diane as well for her additional insights. It's always great to see you. So if there's anything we can do to support you along the way, thank you for, just showing up for Next and being here. A special shout out to Caitlin Guest, who is our staff member that helps support all the tech behind the scenes for these events. We couldn't do it without Caitlin. Caitlin, give us a shout out because you didn't get a chance to say anything today yet.
Hi, thanks so much for joining. We really appreciate getting to see you all.
And I'll just say that Caitlin will send out the recording link to everybody next week. We do upload these onto YouTube and they're made available. The recording links are made available to all of you on our website. If you go to the events section and do the drop down under recording links or recorded events, you can go back and look at all of the plan giving sessions that we've hosted over the last 24 months. Any of those that you think might be of interest, you can click on the link and listen in, in your drive to work or when you're getting up in the morning, having your morning coffee. And it's just another great resource of tools in our library for each of you to benefit from. So with that said, thank you so much, everybody. It's great to see you. And we'll look forward to seeing you in June at our next planned giving learning session, if not before.